Hello everyone, welcome back to My Wife's Not Home, so she can't stop me from making this video on my break, where today, Bungie has announced that players detected using automation to circumvent idle detection or perform automated activities to earn loot may be restricted or banned. Loot includes, but is not limited to, XP, materials or drops, like exotic class items. Automation or circumvention includes, but is not limited to, the use of programmable controllers, keyboard and mouse adapters, advanced macros, or artificial intelligence. We have no plans to retroactively issue bans or restrictions to anyone, and any bans or restrictions related to this policy change will be issued for future infractions. Players who are currently using or have used macros for the above purposes may receive an in-game message warning against the future of macros. In a vacuum, completely in a vacuum, I am fine with this, right? You should never be able to automate a game, even though I know there's literally games out there that are just like auto-playing games. In a game like this, you shouldn't be able to automate your loot or XP experience. That's just how I feel. I don't feel like that's a terribly hot take. Like, again, this just in a vacuum. But I do have some other questions. Number one, why now? Why was this not implemented like forever? Like, why was this just not established as like a baseline rule forever ago, right? I come from World of Warcraft, where if you exploit something most of the time knowingly, you will get banned immediately. Like, there's no like, oh, that's our bad, we'll get around to fixing it, but for now, like, oh, maybe you shouldn't, but I mean, we're not gonna ban you. Like, there's no ambiguity. You just get banned, and that's it. And I've always been big on player responsibility as a result, right? Bungie pretty much just lets people run rampant in this game with any kind of exploit, no matter what it is. AFK farming, economy exploits with people getting thousands of legendary shards or cores or like whatever. They just let people go buck wild. It's like they have no respect for their own game. So they're finally doing something about it. Obviously, this is being driven by the exotic class item farming, even though they reduced the drop rates out of the chest to kind of reduce the effect of automated farming. In a vacuum, I'm fine with this. And I think most people just seeing this in a vacuum would probably be like, that makes sense, right? At the very least, can you give me that? Can you be like, that makes sense that I can't set up automation scripts to farm loot for me in an online game like this? Can you at least give me that? The problem is that we're not in a vacuum, right? The problem is that why were people doing this? Right? Why were people automating their XP gains, their material gains, their drops? It's because people don't like to do the thing that they need to do in order to get the thing in the first place. So you have stuff like people defending the Golgoroth maze, right? Thrallway farming, XP farming, which I personally like never got. Like, the game gives you plenty of XP, just like play the game, lol. But the exotic class item stuff, like, I at least get this, right? I've run my fair share of Dual Destiny. I'm kind of like, I'm 20 to 25 minutes for one class item with no dupe protection. Like, I'm good. I'm good on that, right? Now, they did introduce double drops on your first clear of the week, which for some people is probably doubling the amount of class items you're getting. So I will run one on each class per week to get those double drops. I think that's very nice. But otherwise, not too much extra, although Bungie did say that there was an issue with Overthrow Tier 4 not contributing to potential class item drops. So I'm not actually sure if they fixed that yet. I think they might have, but I'll go back and check and put in a note here. So really what we need to look into is, why are people doing this stuff in the first place? And it's because they don't like to do the thing that is required of them in order to get those things in the first place. And Bungie knows. Bungie knows that farming exotic class items right now, not the most thrilling. They even came out in the TWID recently and said Xur will potentially be selling exotic class items for 41 strange coins, of which you can hold 99. So on certain weeks, the very first week on August 23rd, this update's rolling out tomorrow, by the way, on the 20th. The very first week, he's guaranteed to sell exotic class items for 41 strange coins. Every week after, he will return to his RNG ways. So you can kind of assume that, let's just say it's like a 50-50. Like every other week, you're going to be able to buy a couple of class items from Xur, which is a small but, you know, somewhat slightly noticeable change to exotic class items. Bungie has also said that they are looking into giving players a way to chase specific perks in a future update. More details as plans solidify. So I imagine something like this is maybe slightly harder to build out. Like, it's not that they don't know how we're feeling about this thing. It's just that it takes time to actually build those things and then put them into the game. So something like Xur is probably a little bit easier to make happen compared to like a full change in how this loot is given out to players. So, you know, for that, we got to wait and see. Okay, fine. Now, when it comes to the whole strange coin situation and strange coins being capped at 99, I know a lot of people do not like material caps in this game because people want to be able to save their currency. And I don't really see Bungie changing this up too much. I can maybe see them increasing the cap slightly for strange coins. But I think Bungie's philosophy with materials is that they don't want another legendary shard situation in the game. They don't want people to be able to hoard thousands and thousands of these pieces of currency all at once, even though, like, I know enhancement cores you can hold on to quite a lot. But generally speaking, they don't want people to be able to hang on to so many of these pieces of materials because it makes balancing their costs later on in the game a little more frustrating, right? Like, you know, we used to be in a situation where if you did some kind of legendary shard exploit, you'd be set for life. So Bungie tried to drain those materials out of the economy from players so that they would have to, you know, eventually get more. But all it really ended up doing was shafting lower tier players and new players who didn't have a lot of this currency, so they couldn't even really participate in those things in the first place. Now, also, if you're the kind of person who's like capped on all their materials and all this kind of stuff, do I feel like you really struggle to get these materials in the first place? No, especially strange coins. Like, they're not anything too special. But that's just kind of Bungie's, I think it's, I don't want to speak for them, but that's kind of what I feel like their philosophy is. It's like they want you to spend it and then have to come back to the game to like actually play more instead of just saving. And then something comes out and you spend 8,000 strange coins on something and then that's the end of it. They want you to participate in the game. Now, I have heard some gripes about the people who do some XP farming. Personally, I've never really had a huge problem with getting XP in the game. You know, I do save my bounties, which I don't really like to do. I wish they would get rid of that. But I have seen some people complaining about XP gains, and I think it's more directed towards like the end game players, like some people being like, well, maybe if end game content actually gave increased XP gains, we wouldn't have to resort to, you know, AFKing in the Golgroth maze or the Thrallway or like wherever people are doing their AFKing stuff. And I kind of agree with that. Like XP in the end game has always kind of felt shafted compared to the rest of the game. And I'm never really sure why. Like, shouldn't the hardest thing in the game give the most amount of XP? So I kind of relate to that in a way. Like why is it not? I feel like it's only been recently that Bungie has kind of embraced end game pieces of content in a way that's like actually good for like some holiday events or this event or that event or whatever. Because historically, it's always been like, oh, you run a strike, you get like 20 of this material for the season event or the holiday event or whatever. Oh, you run the raid, you get 2. Like, it's just never made sense. So that's another thing that they can improve on when it comes to like XP farming. Although, again, I'm not really as attached to like XP farming because I'm like, how quickly do you need to get season rank 100, right? Does it really matter that much? Just play the game a little bit. Now, we also have some questions around checkpoint bots. And Bungie has said, we have no plans to issue restrictions or bans to checkpoint bots under this policy change. Breathe easy. Hit us with feedback on what activities you most often use checkpoint bots for and why. Happy to pass this along. And I'm sure this is going to be very, very quickly filled with feedback, like people farming dungeon or raid exotics, or people farming specific encounters because there's some sort of event going on that, you know, makes that event a lot easier to do. Stuff like that, right? If Bungie gave us the ability to pick which checkpoint or which boss we could teleport to right from the very beginning, we wouldn't have a need for these checkpoint bots. And it's maybe something to start considering implementing into the game. Like, people are doing this anyway, and you're not going to ban for it. So, like, what would be the harm in introducing checkpoints into certain raids or dungeons, right? Where you could just go to the exact boss that you want to fight against, and that's the end of it. I think another reason you're maybe not seeing people run raids in full is because of crafted weapons, and because a lot of endgame players already have the best armor that they can possibly have. So, you know, I used to just run raids for fun back in the day with my friends, but ever since crafted weapons come along, it's like, okay, well, I have the pattern for everything, and I got the exotic, and I'm never going to need armor until Bungie does something about needing new armor. So it's like, why am I going to run the raid, right? Whereas before, you had that incentive to be like, oh, maybe I can get a god roll this, or maybe I can get some good armor for this, and blah, blah, blah. So now people are just like target farming the exact things that they need, because as soon as they get all the patterns and they get the exotic or whatever, or they do all the challenges, they're just done, right? So there's no real incentive to run the full raid versus like just going to a certain checkpoint to like farm the final boss for the exotic, or farm the easiest boss because there's some sort of event that's going on that's like clear 2 raid encounters and you just want to do the fastest one. I guess that's another piece of feedback for Bungie. So I think that's about everything that I got on the whole like banning automation of loot. Again, in a vacuum, like this should have been implemented forever ago. Like, why this wasn't just the norm, I have no idea. Why there's always been like so much ambiguity. That I think that's a problem that I've had recently, is just this like, well, you shouldn't do it, but we're not gonna ban you, but you shouldn't do it. Like, pick a side. I don't care which side you pick. Just don't make it this ambiguous, like, oh, don't do that. Like, what are you going to do about it? Well, nothing. Either do something or do nothing. Just, you have to pick one. And finally, they've picked one. I don't know why it took this long, again, because now people are going to look at this, you know, in relation to like how the rest of the game is going right now and all the other drama going on with the game and with Bungie, and be like, oh, ruining my fun, ruining me not playing the game at all to get items fun. Which, like, I'm not even going to get into that, but something about these things needs to change to make them more enjoyable, so that people actually want to participate in the gaining of these things. Now, how they end up doing that remains to be seen. Something's obviously got to change, right? You need to, like, this is one way of getting rid of the behavior, but we need to get rid of the reason why people resorted to doing this in the first place. So over the next couple months, we'll see what they end up doing. If they change XP gains, if they make exotic class items even easier to get. Again, I'm hoping for like a double or triple, you know, class item weekend, class item week, something. Anything that they can do to relieve that tension in the short term is going to be very, very appreciated. That's it. I think that's it. I think that's everything. Okay, bye. Thanks for watching. Bye. I'll see you next time.